Welcome to the On the Move small group series. We're really excited to come at you behind the scenes a little bit. I'm here with Pastor Nate.
Hey, what's up, Terry?
What's up, man? We're just going to have a little bit of an unfiltered conversation. We've thought about some things to share along the way, but the intent of this time is to take what you're talking about on Sunday and then help the small groups really begin to unpack, where we are in this On the Move series, which is such a key time for our church. So as we go through these weeks, each week we'll be kind of pulling out the highlights from the sermon and then giving you some handholds on some ways that you as a small group can talk about that. But really, and part of that too, is just to hear like what's on your heart with everything. I love the first week, and it kind of starts at that obvious starting point, the life of Jesus. And so week one is we're a church on the move, and Jesus is on the move, right?
That's
so obviously we're going to start with Jesus, but like in your own words, in your own heart, like why for you specifically is it important that we start this whole thing on Jesus?
The parable that we looked at from Sunday really sets the tone. It's this parable looking at Jesus, how Jesus gave up everything he had. He's the merchant, and we're the pearl. He gave up everything to have us. And I think what's so compelling about Jesus is, and what makes him so unique, is that Jesus never asks us to do anything that he's not willing to do himself, that he didn't demonstrate first. And so why do we love Jesus? Because he first loved us. Why do we forgive others? Because he first forgave us. And so I think it's the obvious place to start with Jesus because of what he's done for us. I think about how he considers me the pearl. If you knew me, if you knew my 18-year-old self, I wasn't a pearl, right? No one would. I'm more like a rock, dumb as a rock, in fact, but not worth sacrificing for, and yet Jesus saw me as a pearl. He saw me as the apple of his eye. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and we are his joy. And that's true for me, that's true for you, that's true for all of us listening. His generosity is so compelling because he first gave his life for us. And so that's the heart of this whole thing. Yes, it's about raising money, and we're going to call our church to raise money for the future to shape the future, but really, this is about discipleship. It's about the heart, getting at the heart of what Jesus did for us. And then out of that heart of love, wanting to give back to out of what he's given for us.
Absolutely. I like that phrase, the 18-year-old version of myself. I mean, think about it in your own life. And we have these different versions as we grow and walk with Jesus or wherever we find him.
I'm still not particularly pearly. Just got a long way to go.
As we think about it, and as we really seek to start this thing founded on Jesus, I think a good way to think through that, and we want to challenge you in these groups, is think about Jesus, how he came into your own life, and how this whole mission that we're on to help others find Jesus, I mean, it's a good thing to look back and see what Jesus has done. So with that in mind, I mean, can you think of just a way to share that from your own life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, going back to my story, I think my story really has to begin with my parents, because my parents invested in me and my brothers as well, spiritually. They had a real, genuine, tested, resilient faith, and they modeled that so well. They taught us the gospel from a young age. Now, I willfully rebelled against the truth of the gospel. I allowed the passions of my heart and the enemy to sift me and lead me away. I was kind of like where it says in Hebrews, falling away to a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. And that's how I lived for a number of years, in active rebellion. And through a series of challenges that came into my life, whether it was death of a really close friend or death of my grandmother, or a breakup that was hard, just other things I was dealing with, felt like the rug was systematically being pulled out from under me. And God in his grace was doing that, shaking up my life, the pillars of my life, so that I would seek him and find him again. And so I did begin to sort of half-heartedly seek him again. in that process of seeking him, I met a man who, in his generosity and like Jesus came and sought me, and that was Pastor Bob. And I've shared my testimony with some of you. You know that story. But Pastor Bob pursued me, and even when I was flaking out on him and not showing up to meetings, even when I was, giving him some of my concerns, some of my doubts and skepticism and hurts, he really just loved me anyway. And it was through studying through the book of Romans that God infiltrated my heart again. The idea that God, as he says in Romans, in Romans 5, Paul says that God demonstrates his own love for us in this, that while we are still sinners, Christ died for us. Christ pursued us as that pearl, so to speak, in the midst of our filth, in the midst of our sin. And when that happened, it was like everything became new to me, and my life, this new life with Christ began. So that's how it started in my life.
That's really cool. That makes me think a little bit about my story. I won't go too long on it, but I grew up in a home where Jesus was not always at the center. I mean, it was in my mom's life and other people's, but we didn't have that kind of household sort of maybe that you grew up in. But I do remember when I was about that age too, when I was 16, there was a guy named Neil who grabbed a group of us and started discipling us. And that was the first time that I opened up the Word and started memorizing it. And that's where I found one of my favorite verses from Ephesians chapter 3, about how we just are grounded and rooted in this love of Christ. And we got to live out of that, Awesome. So with that in mind, I think we want to really push you and encourage you today. Start opening up if we're going to begin this thing on Jesus, then it's a great place to start is for you to share stories with one another about how Jesus has come to your life and to start hearing those testimonies. Do you have any ideas or thoughts for small groups today?
Yeah, I think a small group is a great place to be able to share your story. So maybe you've already done that in your small group. You've shared your stories and your spiritual journeys with each other. But if you haven't done that, and even if you have, I'd encourage you to take like the 5 to 7 minute version of your story. Maybe just hit some of the highlights. Who are the people that invested in you in your spiritual life? How have you seen the generosity of Jesus in your life? His grace, his mercy, his forgiveness. His truth come into your life, his pursuit of you come into your life as the pearl of great price, and just be able to share that with each other. So one, just be open, be vulnerable in sharing with one another. I would encourage you to be honest, maybe about some of the areas of your life that you haven't told people about. I think this is a great time to just open up and begin to learn how to trust one another in the group. And then I would also just say to go deeper. Do that prayerfully, but go deeper. This whole On the Move initiative, this series is all about moving forward in your spiritual life with the Lord, taking that next step. And so be willing to go deeper with each other. And maybe at the end of each story, I'd encourage you to be able to pray for that person in your group who just shared. So those are a few ideas.
Yeah, and we hope that this is a starting point. We know to share your story, it may take time. It may not all happen tonight, and that's okay. But this is a place we want to set the culture, that we want to be open with one another. We really want to go after Jesus in our lives and really just hear words of gratitude and encouragement. So that's what we're going to guide you into today with the Leader's Guide. Wherever you happen to be today, these videos are meant for small groups throughout the life of our church. It doesn't matter what kind of group you are, what your stage of life is, what your group makeup is. These videos can be used at the table, at the dinner table. So we really want our church to begin talking in small, tight-knit circles about how we are becoming a church on the move. As we send them off, any kind of final thoughts or words of encouragement?
I would just say continue to move forward together. Do this as a group, and just trust that God is going to take you on this journey, even when it's a little challenging. God is going to take you on this journey, and He's not going to leave you or forsake you at any point.